Right, welcome to the 5th episode in learning the C# for Unity game development. So in this episode, we'll be covering if statements. And if statements pretty much decide whether to do something or not to do something. So let's go ahead into our start function and make a new if statement. So you start with your if, just the keyword if, and then you do 2 parentheses. And then in here, we'll eventually have our boolean. And right now we can just fill it in with true, because that is a boolean. And then you use 2 curly brackets, and there it is, there's your if statement. And then, so what if statements basically do is they check if this boolean right here is true, then it'll run this code, right? So we can just tell it to do something here. This is true. So it'll print out that, and because it is true, it should print that out for us. So there it goes. This is true. So if we put in false here, then it won't do anything at all. Now sometimes we might not want this to be the case. We want to say, okay, if it runs through this and sees that this is false, then we want to do something else. So we'll use the keyword else right after our ending curly bracket here, and then make 2 new curly brackets. And in between there, we can have our false code, kind of. So we can put this as false. And there we go. So because this is indeed false, that's what it'll say for us. And there it is. This is false. So now there's one more that I want to show you, but first I want to set up something first. So let's make a few new string variables, and let's name this one user input. We're just going to put this here because the Unity console doesn't have a user input function. So we're just going to kind of treat this as our user input. So let's leave that empty for now, and let's make a few names. So we can do name 1 and name 2. So we can name this first person Ben, like we did in the variables episode. He's making a comeback. And then for our second person, we'll do Stacy. So there we go. And let's say the user types in Troy. Oh, let's make that capital. So we want to see if user input, and then instead of this, we're going to do dot equals. And that's just what you do with strings. If user inputs name 1, which is Ben, then we'll want to say, hey, Ben. Just give him a nice greeting. And then we won't want to do something completely different if it's not the case. We want to make a separate condition for Stacy. So we do this with the else if statement. And then you structure it just like the if statement. So if the name is not equal to Ben, then it'll go down here and check out this boolean right here. So we're going to check if our user input equals name 2. And then our name 2 is Stacy. So we'll just say, what's happening, Stacy? Oops, there you go. And then if it's none of these names, then we'll just do a generic statement. We'll just be like, hello. And then remember from the 3rd episode, we do some string concoction. So end that quotation mark and then do plus user input. So this will just say hello and then plop our user input right on the end of that. So because our user input is not Ben or Stacy, it'll just say hello and then Troy, because we have Troy put in there. So there it is, hello Troy. And then let's say it's Ben. So now it'll say, okay, our user input is equal to name 1, so we're going to say hey Ben. So let's check that out. There it is, hey Ben. And then we can try that again with Stacy. So it'll say, okay, it's not equal to our name one, which is Ben, and then it'll head down over to here and check out if it's equal to name 2. And as we can see, it is equal to name 2, so it'll say, what's happening, Stacy? And there it is. What's happening, Stacy? Wonder what is happening. All right. So yeah, those are if statements along with else if and else. So these can do a lot of things. Yeah. So that concludes this episode. Next time we'll be covering for loops, which are a pretty fancy little tool that we can use. All right, till then.